Today is January 4. It is officially winter. We're expecting snow later on this week. So before the frost hits, I'm gonna take you around to show you what my garden is looking like in winter. I'm Jack City Gardener and welcome to my garden. If you're new here, welcome. I'm so glad to have you. I am an urban gardener growing in Atlanta Zone 7, Zone 8. I grow in a very small urban lot, one of those postage stamp lots. I actually get to experience a lot of different microclimates, including a shady spot, a sunny spot, a bog area, a dry area, which means I have experience growing with a lot of different kind of plants. So there are 4 main areas to my garden. There is the front garden, which is where I grow all my perennials in a mixed hedge. There is the back garden, which is where I grow tropicals and shade plants. And then there's the side garden, which is where I have a vegetable area. And then on the other side is my work area, my potting area. I do all of the gardening around here, all on my own. I don't have a gardener. I don't have hired help. I would like you to see how much you can do on your own, and most importantly, on a budget. If you're thinking about gardening and you are discouraged by how expensive it can be, let me tell you, it can be expensive, but there are certainly ways to cut back on costs. And if you stick around with me, I'm going to show you some of those ways. I'm also going to show you what I have accomplished without a lot of help, without a lot of time, and without a lot of money. So let's go ahead and get started in the front garden. But before we head out into the front garden, I wanted to give you a quick look at this amaryllis that I'm growing in my living room in this container, this mixed container, along with paper whites and some crocus bulbs. And this container has been blooming since Christmas, and there are still so many bulbs left to come. I've got another one on my dining room table with an amaryllis bulb that is about to bloom. The amaryllis are in the later stages of their blooming period. The paper whites are soon to follow, and the crocus will be blooming shortly after that. My winter cottage garden is really characterized by this beautiful mixed hedge that's been developing over the years. It is held together now by this Japanese privet with its glossy dark green leaves that are evergreen, and the blue ajuga or bugleweed carpet of purple underneath the mixed hedge. This bugleweed has been growing here since this past autumn when I split it from a larger chunk. It is taking no time at all to carpet the base of this mixed hedge. This Colorado blue spruce anchors this mixed hedge, which is a huge undertaking on the gardener's part because Colorado spruce can grow to be a very large specimen. It is being size controlled. I do maintain this spruce at this size. I do have plans to cut it back even smaller than it is now, just to be on the safe side. It's majestic, it gives me privacy, and it looks great when lit up for Christmas. And then the other side of my mixed hedge is anchored by this magnolia, star magnolia ruby, that has these beautiful magenta flowers in spring. This tree has been through a lot with me. I have moved it 3 times, and I had plans to move it one more time, but it has finally started to look good after suffering powdery mildew, dropping leaves, and now that it's finally getting through the summer without so many issues, I think that I just have to leave it alone. I think I can't set it back anymore, and I'm super excited to see the flowers in spring. When you're looking at the garden from the front patio or from the front door, The mixed hedge forms more of a background to the perennials in the long perennial border at the front lawn, which is decorated with this 3D wreath that I created from the wreath model at the dollar store. Got really creative. I used ivy vines to wrap it around and give it some integrity. I used moss to form a base that I filled with all kinds of evergreens, and then I wrapped some string lights around it. In the perennial border, we still have plenty of color from the lavender. Lavender is evergreen in my area. It propagates super well, so I like to have it all over the garden for use in the kitchen, in cleaning, and in bug repellent, cosmetics, and to decorate with. Dry some up, grind it up into a powder, and put it into baked goods, into your coffee, put them in sachets and put them in drawers and in the laundry. There are just way more reasons to grow lavender than to not. This is the foundation border that I have recently been renovating. I have removed all the perennials from this border and just added some propagations of lamb's ear. I thought it was getting a little bit too busy for a space that I really didn't have a good eye on most of the time. But I do want this area to have a lot of foliage interest and texture, as well as contrasting colors. And even as we make our way down into the secret garden, you can start to see the shrub story that my garden is telling. As the perennials in my garden go dormant and retreat beneath the soil, it's things like this Globosa nana cryptomeria that offer color and texture and vibrancy to this garden. Combined with the holly and the loropetalum, the holly is bursting in berries. Even without flowers, I have this vibrant red and purple. And did you know that when a holly is laden in berries like this, that is a sign from nature that a cold winter is coming and for the wildlife to prepare? My mom always told me to grow gardenia beneath the windows so that in the springtime you could open up the windows and let their smell in, and so I did. There is a carpet of Japanese ogon grass and heuchera. There is an opportunity in this area to grow more heuchera. It appears to be doing very well and enjoying the moisture here. If you're having trouble growing heuchera, the trick is to try a different varieties and then rule out the varieties that seem to do the best in your area. It just takes a bit of trial and error. Here in winter, the vegetable garden is out of use. The raised bed, the beautiful iron arbor, the remnants of the grape that grew here, which produced so many grapes last year, but was more of a decoration this one. Now please excuse the mess. We are undergoing some construction. This area is under renovation this year. It was beautiful, full of tropical plants and perennials last year. Just such beautiful, lush growth. However, it can get a little bit cumbersome in this small space. So I will be rethinking some of the planting. The Japanese akuba that is planted here maintains structure in winter, but there isn't any structure in this part of the garden. I also need to be thinking about more ground cover in this space and low growing plants. There is a forsythia bush growing here, as well as several black-eyed Susan, but nothing really exciting. Nothing excites me back here. I think adding a climbing vine to this trellis might help, but if you have any ideas, please share them down below. This is a sunny area. It doesn't get a lot of water, but it doesn't dry out. Hydrangea macrophylla does well back here, even without supplemental watering. Any ideas for climbing vines? Any ideas for ground cover or shrubs that you think would look good back here, both in the summer and in the winter? Please let me know. And now we move into the other side garden where I have a little bit of entertaining space. This area is pretty much finished, although I would like to feature more of this fern, this large fern, and the fatsia. I think a trio of ferns in front of a trio of fatsia and maybe a few winter containers would look so good here. And that is one thing that I've really enjoyed about kind of taking my time here in the garden, is just watching plants and seeing what does well. Some really good advice that I've gotten was to grow several plants together, but that does not necessarily mean going to the garden shop and just buying several plants at one time. Sometimes it's a good idea to get one or two of the same plant and to watch it and to see how it does before deciding that maybe you need to expand. This one pulmonaria or lungwort looks great here, but a drift of pulmonaria all through this garden would look even better. Because of the dropping temperatures, the leaves of this leopard plant are drooping now, but they'll spring back up in the spring and look beautiful. I'm hoping to form a drift of some of these key plants, including this Brennera, Siberia blue gloss. These plants are still quite young, only in their first growing year. So looking at this garden bed, I'm also looking ahead at the potential for growth and how much space that these key plants will take up. And I'm embracing ground cover, especially evergreen ground cover. This woodland phlox spreads moderately quickly, and although it hugs the ground, it rises above these crowns with beautiful tufts of white and purple flowers that just look so ethereal in the spring. This is where you'll find me in the summer and in the spring when the weather is nicer, hanging out in the hammock or gathering friends or family or puttering in the workspace. I'm storing some of my containers with tender plants here, and this is an experiment. I'm not sure if they will make it through the winter. I will let you know. This is an avocado tree. I will cover it in the snow when the snow does come, as well as these elephant ears and these front pots. And this night blooming jasmine that is already showing some stress from the cooler weather, but I do believe that it will bounce back in the spring. And camellia is not a tender plant at all. It is super winter hardy. And this is the only camellia that I'm growing in this garden. I had some bad luck with the two other camellia that I brought into the garden. One was trampled by contractors and the other dried out. Speaking of dry, let's take a quick look at one of my biggest challenges in the garden. It is this retaining wall. I've tried a lot of different plants here, and this past summer I've watched a lot of plants wither and die in the sweltering heat and drought. Ivy does well here no matter what is going on, and some of the perennial grasses, the lily turf and the hellebore remain stalwarts on this retaining wall. But one plant that has stood out above the rest is oak leaf hydrangea. So let's imagine for a moment the drift of oak-like leaves and the plumes of hydrangea flowers in the summer, the fall color in the leaves in autumn. Can you see it? I'm building this stairway up the retaining wall to the compost area. It's not super glamorous, but just like the workspace, it is essential to my garden. I keep as much of the plant material here as I can. So if I prune, weed, rake something up, I add it to my compost bin, and I've actually gotten a lot of great material from that. Recycling materials in the garden is super important to me. I was so happy when I was able to take the old deck boards from this deck remodel to build some of the structure in my garden, including this raised bed. And I still have the material to create at least one, maybe two more raised beds like it in this area. I've also used it to create this workspace. The potting table and the plant shelf are both made up of leftovers from the deck and from the fence. This is where I store most of my seeding and propagating materials, and I also am able to store some plants here, plants that don't mind dealing with a little bit more cold and don't need to be kept under cover. These are just some leftover divisions that may or may not make it through the winter, but if they do, I'll have a better idea of where I can put them, or I can share them with friends. The work area is in need of a little bit of paint, and I think I would like to put some pavers down to stand on in front of the potting area. And I would also like to add sort of a cold frame or greenhouse type structure here in the sunnier part of this side garden. I've been working on this space now for 3 or 4 years, and it still amazes me how slow the process is, but then also how sometimes it seems like you blink and something that was just a blank, totally uninspiring space can be transformed into something that is really reflective of your personality and your lifestyle. The biggest compliment you can give me when in my home is to tell me that it is cozy and comfy and feels like home. And the greatest compliment you can give me when visiting my garden is to tell me that it transports you to another place. And that's exactly what someone told me seasons ago, before the growth has exploded to the point that it is today. And so I want to thank you so much for visiting my garden with me in winter, and I hope that you'll return to see what my garden is looking like in the spring. Stay well, stay warm, stay hydrated, and I'll see you in the next one.